welcome to our panel. It's great to have you all here late at this hour. We will have a very technical but very good panel here. We have great guests. Let me start by introducing myself. I'm Ozge Erdemir. I've been in crypto since 2020. I've been doing business development, KOL marketing, institutional deals. So our topic today is the new Web3 stack, privacy, interoperability, and real-world infrastructure. As this speculative era of Web3 phase, infrastructure is taking center stage, and today we explore what's broken, what's being built, and who is poised to win as Web3 finally grows up. Web3 build is representing privacy, interoperability, and real-world infrastructure. Let me lead the stage to our panelists. Let's introduce ourselves and the projects they are working on. I'm sure people are familiar with the projects, but let's deep dive. Yeah.
So I'm Daniel Maddern. I'm the CTO at Meta-Earth. We are a layer 1 blockchain focused on sustainability and real-world use cases.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Temujin Louie. I'm CEO of Wanchain. Wanchain is a very long-running blockchain interoperability protocol. We have a variety of different offerings from token bridge, data bridge, as well as some kind of standards work that we do. So it's very nice to be here.
Hi everyone, I'm Victor, co-founder of Manta network. Manta is the first and largest modular L2. We're the first one using Celestra DA and use a very interesting way to grow our TVL. Right now focus on real yield generation through funding rate and RWA.
Thank you. Let me start with the first question. How would each of you describe this new Web3 stack? And how is it fundamentally different from the architecture of early Web3? Yeah.
Me?
Yeah, let's start. Everyone comments about it.
Okay, so Web3 started very monolithic. When you look at Bitcoin, Ethereum, it was kind of like the on-premise computing of Web2. If you look at things like back in 2022, the mints for NFTs on Ethereum, where you saw gas prices surpassing the value of the NFTs. That was the kind of the mindset of how everything was built back then. Now we're moving towards faster transactions, real-world use cases. We need modular systems that can move fast, onboard users. Sorry.
Yeah, it's gone.
So modular architecture is really what's needed in the Web3 space now. There's a growing need for apps to have their own block space, their own execution, and I think the big movement in Web3 is towards modular architecture, and it's a really good one.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I can piggyback on that. Definitely the modular aspect is one of the important shifts that we're witnessing. When I look at original quote-unquote Web3 and this new Web3, the new Web3, at least in theory, is not going to be quite as messy. It's still going to be a little bit messy. We still like that part of it, but we can kind of see this shift. That original Web3 was a lot of it kind of like a proof of concept. So from an infrastructure point of view, it was very monolithic. You had kind of layer 1, run everything there. Now we're going kind of more modular. Similarly with scaling, again, it was all just in one place, and then you have roll-ups and different layer 2s and things like that. For Wanchain, we've seen similar shifts, or at least we're hoping to see similar shifts when it comes to interoperability. These past few years, everything was ad hoc. Every project that's doing bridges or any type of interoperability solution, it's all we're just building however we want. We're not following any type of blueprint. We've all seen kind of the consequences of that. So in kind of new Web3, this should shift to something that's more standardized, more proven, more vetted openly. And similarly, you can kind of see sort of the same thing with security as well. It was ad hoc before, but now it'll be maybe more formal, greater reliance on zero-knowledge proofs and these types of technologies. So this kind of maturity from the original Web3 to the new Web3, this is what we're starting to witness, and we're making good progress.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, I think right now we are in the stage of, not everyone care about the infrastructure in the Web3 space. But I would say like, for quite a long time, like the reason we build this infrastructure is we try to make the gas fee really cheap. Like that's the only reason we build for user, and then we choose modular stack. We use Celestia DA, and the gas fee really cheaper than the like pre-4844 Ethereum, like other layer 2. But right now, like everyone's gas fee almost the same. What we focus is, we try to use the token, do the restaking, work with Babylon, work with like Symbiotic, get different kind of token as the security, economy security level of like token for the fast finality, for the stake, for the like restaking to enable this kind of like safe withdrawal. Because right now I have to say, the layer 2 is just a multi-sig. Kind of, I mean, like the multi-sig can stop the chain. It can make the, it cannot make the money gone, but it can basically stop everything. But how to make the withdrawal faster without fraud proof, we bet on the economy of security.
Like you said, the interest has shifted a little bit, I guess, from infrastructure. And do you think the investor landscape is evolving in parallel to the improvements we are seeing in the industry?
I feel like the infrastructure is evolving into the direction very, very focused on research. And this direction is get away from user. So users don't care about the infrastructure now. They care about meme coin. And meme coin is fine. And we like meme coin too. Every coin is a meme coin. A lot of people don't think in that way, but it's the truth. Because eventually, even stock, like you buy the stock, but it doesn't really relate it to the revenue. Even the company have a lot of revenue, it's still the pump and dump depends on the emotion, the sentiment. So right now, the sentiment take over everything. You see Kaito, you see everything. That become the infrastructure, not the technology. So we will see how that goes. This going to another extreme direction. I see the extreme. And then I think it will shift back again to some infrastructure. But I don't think it's the research level. It's going to be a focus on user.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I sort of agree with that. I think there's a few exceptions, but they're almost all limited to new layer ones, which are still able to attract that type of investment. But kind of the supporting core infrastructure, totally agree. People who are working in infrastructure right now have kind of leaned into the research and development side of things. Part of it, is probably honest. Part of it is probably just after a few years of dealing with end users, it's kind of a safe haven. We don't have to worry about the coin, we don't have to worry about, people complaining all the time. We're just going to lock in and do research and development. So there's probably an element of that as well. And similarly, I think a lot of the projects that are kind of doing this really good work, there's always exceptions. Some are well-funded, but a lot of them, they made a lot of money in the early stages. They're from the 2017 era and to a lesser extent the 2020 era. And so those who were responsible with their treasury, okay, now they have this buffer. They can sit through a 5-year bear market and not have to worry about how they're going to pay salaries, so they can just go and focus on what they want. This doesn't necessarily align with the needs of investors. So that's kind of my perspective on it. We'll see it swing back. For that to happen, though, we probably need kind of the altcoin bull market to kind of return, to kind of entice new money and kind of riskier ideas to come into play. Because right now we're kind of in a stage where taking risks at the infrastructure layer is kind of not recommended.
Yeah, I think I agree with that as well. With the bear market we've just been through, I think investors are very apprehensive around risky infrastructure investors, flashy apps that they can make money on quick are great. But yeah, I think we're going to see a real swing back to core infrastructure and good projects.
Yeah, like you said, the sentiment has shifted a little bit and people are more focused on meme coin trading, but maybe this is going to change in the future again.
Yeah, and people are probably getting a little bit burned out. I'm sure we haven't seen the end of meme coins, but what was in February or March, there was
Yeah.
like another big meme coin push, but that is like almost totally died out right now. People just all lost their money really quickly, so now everyone's taking a break again. You can only lose all of your money so many times before you need to stop.
Yeah. So which of these pillars do you think privacy, interoperability, and real-world integration has been most neglected in Web3 so far, and why? Which one you want to start?
I think real-world integration is what's really been missing in Web3. I think privacy, we're in a pretty good spot. I mean, yeah, blockchain is very private by its nature. The compliance side and real-world integration, I think it's very easy to make a project that doesn't rely on the real world. It's just wallets and money. As soon as you want real-world interactivity, you want KYC users, that's when a project gets difficult. And at Maddern, we've got a decentralized identity system to help bring real-world users on-chain and then interact with projects. I think that's the kind of systems we need going forward. So, kind of when you're looking at more traditional either infrastructure or organizations or governance, you need that real-world connection.
I mean, I would love to sit up here and say that it's interoperability, but I think we all know that's not true. I will say privacy, although you made some very strong arguments, started convincing me a little bit. But just from my perch, I have been hearing about kind of RWAs kind of being the next wave that's going to kind of drive this next cycle. So I think maybe if you asked 2 years ago, okay, our real-world assets and this side of things, but I think maybe the attention is kind of pointed there now. With privacy, it certainly has been there at various moments, but a lot of the time it's kind of been negative. And so that's why I'll say privacy. We've all heard of Tornado Cash and all this kind of heat that goes on there. I'm sure that has had, dissuaded a lot of projects and people that would otherwise be kind of promoting a privacy play, because no one wants to kind of get pulled into that world, or very few people want to get pulled into that world. Very few people are willing to take that sacrifice for privacy as a concept. And with that being said, in terms of where we have to go from here, obviously I'm very biased, but I do think that interoperability is a prerequisite for kind of the mainstream adoption of blockchain. If privacy, becomes something that the focus does shift towards in a kind of a more mainstream way, I think it's just going to introduce like a whole new slew of technical kind of issues that will have to be resolved, because interoperability between private and non-private systems quite complicated. So, but I think it is going to happen at some point, because I often like to say when we talk about adoption and mainstream adoption, it's really just kind of code words for enterprises and government. That's kind of what the mainstream is. And you mentioned that blockchains are kind of private systems. I would also say though that the kind of default state is not private. Maybe it's anonymous, but certainly not private. The data's out there in the open. And if any of you have ever worked in a real company, and I'm sure all of you have, companies are not keen to just take all of their data and throw it out in the open and let everyone see it with no kind of filters. So to imagine a world where there's companies and therefore, and also governments who are doing stuff on chain, you'll at least need some sort of optional privacy function. Not everything's going to be private, but you need to have that toggle. So I do think that's coming, and we haven't really, as an industry, done all of the work really needed for that kind of piece of the adoption puzzle.
Yeah. I think we have the same understanding here. We actually in the early days working on privacy, for the first 2.5 years when we start Manta. But basically we build the whole stack. But I got family. I think we shut down the product before we launch everything. They never go to the user eventually to the product level, but we pivot into modular stack, into cheap layer 2 everything. But people still think we are a privacy chain, because branding is branding. But I do still believe this is kind of the demand, but not everyone's demand right now. Before I was thinking it's really big like definitely everyone need that. But right now I feel, even myself, I don't care, for the lot of on-chain transaction, because, it is what it is. Like a lot of people still cannot trace. But I think right now, basically in crypto, we have two use cases, only two use cases are organic. One is for payment, one is for speculation. Payment is, every day, in Southeast Asia where I live, I see people don't know crypto and then use USDT, do a lot of payment. They buy a lot of things, like really interesting stuff, all in USDT and huge volume. And it's got really good adoption. And speculation is, different coins, all the infrastructure coin, meme coin, every coin, they just create a lot of new assets. These new assets make people can buy, in Turkey, can buy in Asia, can buy in Europe, but everyone talking about same language, and there's no entry barrier. I mean, it's really low entry barrier compared to open a stock, open account in Nasdaq. And also there's 24 hours. So that's what I see, best trading experience, easier to onboard like a user for the payment. Those two still the best use case. Compared to all of the infrastructure, I'm not that bullish on RWA, I see a lot of people doing that in Hong Kong and a lot of people doing in different countries. But it's just database. Database can solve everything. I believe centralized database can solve a lot of things. Blockchain doesn't create new use case. But interoperability, I do think is important. Like I talked to the optimism guy, they build a whole OP stack, but after 2 years, they talk, we need to build the interoperability layer. Why they don't do in the early days? One, because they don't have enough engineers. And the second is they didn't thought it's going to be that big issue. But after there's so many 200 layer tools, and then we build the interoperability layer, everything too late. It's just make Ethereum down and no users, because all the user goes all go to different places. That's not good, right?
Let me ask a question to you directly, Victor. Manta is pioneering with zero-knowledge privacy. In your view, what are the biggest misconceptions people still have about ZK tech, especially when it comes to usability and scalability? You mentioned to me that you actually embrace a different approach a little bit, but maybe we can deep dive a bit more on this part.
Yeah, I mean, as I said, I don't want to go to jail, so we stopped the product. But I still think, ZK have a lot of use cases. I think right now, actually, the product maybe can live because after Trump regime, everything is work now. Mm-hmm. Tornado Cash founder, Silk Road founder, they go out of jail now. So everything works fine. But I think, generally the need on the privacy is mainly focused on trading, like dark pool. That's the best use case. I'm really bullish on that direction. ZK is the best way to solve that. And maybe RWA needs ZK, but I'm not sure. But I think best trading experience, that's the key use case.
Okay, thank you. Daniel, building geospatial infrastructure on-chain is a forward-thinking idea. What are the most practical challenges you encountered in making it work on the ground, and how do you make sure this integration becomes truly impactful rather than being experimental?
So the biggest problem with any kind of geospatial solution is trust. GPS can be faked. Without secondary validators, real-world interactions, devices, it's very hard to build a trustless system that's actually accurate. So we have a really good layer for geospatial data. It's got validators, ZK proofs, timestamps that can be verified. You can't trust a single source when it comes to geospatial data, especially when you're talking about real-world users. So having a layer where we can process real-world data around location and timestamp in real time with extra validators, it's hard, but we've done it.
Okay, thank you. And Temujin, Wanchain has been in the cross-chain game for a while, so what's the missing link in today's interoperability landscape, do you think? Are we near like truly seamless multi-chain world right now?
Well, unfortunately, I'll have to say we're not particularly close to a true seamless multi-chain world. You know, I mentioned it at the, a few minutes ago, that original Web3 where everyone's building kind of ad hoc. That's still kind of the case in interoperability. You have different players, they're all just building their bridges in their own way. They're making design decisions that are really just, based on the particular problem they happened to have faced. And nothing's being shared really, and nothing's being vetted, and so everything's just kind of a hot mess. We often talk, envision this, that these chains are just like seamlessly perfectly passing data. It doesn't really matter what chain you're on, all the liquidity will just flow. But right now it doesn't work that way because all these different interoperability protocols, they're all incompatible with one another. So what we as interoperability, or the interoperability sub-industry, what we've actually ended up doing is just refragment everything. You had all these different chains. We said, okay, we're going to connect everything, and we just cut it in different shapes. That's basically where we're at right now. Those of you who were kind of speculating in the last bull market probably experienced that firsthand. You probably went to like a hot new chain at that time, maybe something like Moonbeam, and then realized that there was like 4 different types of wrapped USDC there. Yeah. There's no naming standards. They all had the same ticker. You couldn't figure out, or had to work harder than you should have to be able to figure out, okay, how do I unwrap this? Well, I have USDC. Why can't I swap it on the DEX? There's all these types of issues. And that's all because interoperability protocols, they don't work together. We don't trust each other. We've all seen the hacks happen on the news, huge numbers of hacks. This has impacted the builders as well. There's a lot of distrust. Everyone kind of thinks that, okay, our solution's the best, can't really focus on, can't really use someone else's solution. Even I, as a bridge builder, wouldn't dare, take an asset minted by another bridge and integrate it in any meaningful way into my own protocol, because then if that bridge gets hacked, has downstream effects, ruins my bridge. So everything is very, very fractured. So that's kind of the problem that has to be solved. The only real way, well, there's 2 ways. One way is unacceptable, and that is for just, we centralize everything. Everyone just uses the same company to do it all, becomes a proprietary product, but there's a lot of downsides to that. There's vendor lock-in, it makes the problem actually way bigger if something does go wrong with that protocol, because now it's destroyed the entire industry. So that's a non-starter. The second way is a lot slower, it's a lot harder, and that's with industry-wide standards. So, there is progress. I might be sounding very pessimistic right now, but there's progress being made. That there's a handful of bodies that are working on that, have been working on it for a long time. There's more and more collaboration between the different bodies. There's things like the Enterprise Ethereum Alliance. There's things like the Linux Foundation. And then even from Web2 world, and I'm sure these will play an important role in this, like the IEEE and the IETF, they all have or are actively working on specifically interoperability standards. And these are things that are outlining both kind of the interfaces on-chain, how those should work, but also kind of best practices for the kind of relayer, the off-chain layer, because that's basically what bridges are. The 2 blockchains will never be able to directly speak to one another unless, as you mentioned, that was a design decision that was made on literally day 0. Once it's live, that's never happening again. So you have this other piece that is not on-chain that has to kind of be doing this coordination layer. So there's going to be this outside piece realistically. So the industry-wide standards, the most important part is regulating, or at least kind of, not from a governmental perspective, but in terms of a best practice perspective, regulating how these off-chain pieces are operating, making sure that these are all open source, making sure that what they're doing has been vetted so that we have at least kind of a baseline understanding of kind of the security and the risk profile of each of these. And once that's all out in the open, and once everyone is doing basically the same thing, then the different interoperability protocols can start kind of relying on what each other is building. And that becomes really your core layer of interoperability infrastructure. And then the different projects can compete on a product level. Realistically, core interoperability infrastructure is going to be very, very slow, but it's going to be pretty cheap. For end users, you might want fast. Okay, so you can build kind of a product on top of that for a fee. I'll kind of make that transaction go faster for you. I'll assume that risk. So there's still plenty of room to compete and have sustainable projects, but it can't be what it is right now, where we've just kind of basically put proprietary products where core infrastructure should be. And so that's really what needs to change.
Thank you. And how do you see these pillars working together? Like, do you think pushing one might push others? Like, do you think like one of them might be compromised somehow? What is your view on this? Let's start here.
I think security is always going to be a big issue in crypto because of the amount of money involved. So if we look at like the bridge hacks of the last even just 2 years, they're huge and they're only getting bigger. I think it's a problem that's never going to get away from crypto without good standards, like you say. If we know companies are doing the right thing when they're developing products, we can put more trust in those products. And that's going to take time. We need real-world standards that people can measure blockchain companies against to mitigate risk.
Mm-hmm. I think maybe it's temporary. I hope it's not temporary, but I do kind of sense return to acceptance for privacy in some of these protocols because of how taboo it has sort of been for the last years. Like I mentioned, I think the tooling development around this and the support infrastructure for privacy type solutions is lacking. So I think this is really going to kind of drive these other pieces that we're talking about, interoperability as well. We're going to have to now pay more attention on how to make an interoperable system that involves a privacy element. If there's privacy involved, we're going to have to rethink what we mean by compliance, especially if we're talking about mainstream adoption and bringing on enterprises and government. So I think our kind of growing acceptance or the return to accepting privacy, this is going to be a driver for a lot of the different verticals in the industry.
Yeah, I think, it's merely like decision rather than the compromise in the space. For the interoperable, actually, it's really interesting, I think, to show that. As you said, like Moonbeam have all of these, decide to make the chain as a free market, but it's actually overlook the competition of so many chains. If there's only one chain, only Moonbeam, it's okay to have different kind of stablecoin to let a free market decide which chain, well stablecoin can dominate. But it overlook, there's so many chains, and then this chain is not working well, and then users just not use it. So they go to other chains. So eventually, there's so many stablecoin and no one use it. That's a really bad decision on the strategy level. And bridge also, like a bridge, like Hyperline don't even have front end for a really long time. They only build a stack. It's super like open source, well easy to use, but there's just no front end. So users don't have an understanding of Hyperline. But Wormhole is really different. It's super centralized. No one going to integrate it except themselves. And basically, they just a database of all of their partners, so-called, but it's all Web2 guys. I don't think none of those understand crypto. So that's still called bridge. But that's their decision. They make really good branding. So they look like worth more money than the Hyperline. I think the chain level is the same. For us, we would like to make the decision on the more user-facing. And even we can compromise to promote the technology. We choose to promote more how's the user-facing product, what is the demand of the chain, rather than just talk about, oh, we have a fancy technology. Actually, we have some, but other chains also have fancy technology. Everyone has fancy technology, but no one cares right now. So no need to talk too much.
Right. Do you want to add anything else to this, or?
Here.
Okay. Okay, Daniel, you mentioned like trustlessness is very important. Let me ask this from a different perspective, actually. So Maddern is building a modular blockchain with built-in identity and UBI. and cross-chain capabilities. So these are both components. And how do you ensure MetaEarth's infrastructure stays truly decentralized and stable while also being compliant with real-world regulations?
So MetaEarth has a lot of different node operators, different organizations that are running the nodes that validate all our transactions. So we can, if we had a node in Turkey, that Turkey can go through government regulation here, and any real-world transaction can go through that node company. So that way we don't have to focus on core compliance for every single country with one organization. We can have the nodes operating individual countries that are compliant in the areas they're operating. That's, when you want worldwide scale, I think that's the easiest way to get global compliance now.
Okay, thank you. We have a few minutes left, so let me just gather the last thoughts. So if each of you could just improve one aspect of this current Web3 stack to accelerate mass adoption, what would it be and why? Do you want to start?
I think one of the biggest things holding Web2 users back from adopting Web3 is onboarding. Wallets are complex. No one wants to store private keys or their mnemonics. They're easy to lose your wallet. I think the way we solve that is probably MPC wallets. It's getting kind of mainstream in adoption now. Being able to have recovery methods for your wallet is, and social verifications on your wallet to recover, I think is how we build mainstream adoption. And yeah, I don't think the current way of seed phrases and mnemonics, I don't think anyone in Web2 wants to touch it. I don't think they ever will.
Yeah, for me, instead of just always yelling interoperability, I'll choose something that's maybe a little less popular, but I think is quite important. And this is some sort of tooling for compliance / anti-money laundering that is suitable for decentralized protocol. So, you probably all saw, a month ago or something, there's the big Bybit hack, had a few downstream effects, all that stolen money from North Korea went through ThorSwap via OKX DEX, and ThorSwap made the decision that they're not going to interfere, let all the money flow through. But as the front end, or all the traffic went through OKX DEX, they got hit by the regulators in Europe, had to actually shut down for some time while they kind of rejigged their engineering and put on some kind of address screening and different types of tooling like that. Now, they've eventually come back, and now they are scanning everything, making sure that the source of funds are clean, et cetera, et cetera. There's part of that doesn't quite perfectly fit with this ethos of true decentralized systems and true decentralized blockchains that we all have. But if we're talking about mainstream adoption, it's a non-negotiable. Big enterprises, governments, they're not going to come on chain in any meaningful way beyond kind of little case studies here and there if they're not confident that all this stuff is clean and compliant. We at Wanchain, for a few years now, have actually been exploring this angle as well. And unfortunately, the state of affairs right now is that there is actually very powerful tooling, particularly for AML, particularly for address screening, but it's built with centralized exchanges in mind, basically. It's the only way to kind of integrate this into your decentralized protocol is to make it less decentralized. And because none of this stuff is on-chain, they're just basically off-chain APIs. You just throw them an address, they'll do their stuff, trace the source of funds, give you a risk score, and then let you decide, okay, if it comes back a 9, I'll block it or something like that. It's effective, but it's not a Web3 solution. And so until there's something more suitable for decentralized protocols, I think that's really going to hold us back in one of two ways. One, we're just never going to get to that real mainstream adoption level. Or two, what Web3 actually becomes just has to be less decentralized. And I don't think anyone here wants that. So what we need is tooling that is attacking this head on, not kind of shying away from compliance and AML, and building something that's suitable for DeFi.
Yeah, I actually think it's like getting more and more centralized. You
Yes.
can see from the Bitcoin, the ETF, after ETF, right now I think around at least 3%, 3 to 6% are held by all of these ETF. of Bitcoin. You know, the most decentralized crypto are held by largest holder right now is the U.S. Wall Street bankers. So this just become ridiculous right now. So I think it's going to be more and more because they have the easiest way to buy crypto. You know, if there's exception is if we can build something better user experience and a really easy way to buy crypto in a decentralized way, then probably we can go back decentralized. Otherwise, it will be more centralized. I feel it's really hard because they have really good experience, and my grandma can trading it. I'm not sure my grandma can do hyperliquid or any on-chain product. It still take time.
Okay, thank you for your views, guys. So today we spoke about the new Web3 stack and what's broken, what's being built, and what can be improved. Let's give a round of applause for our guests, guys. Thank you.